Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Bryan Dosono, and in late April of 2022, I was invited by the University of Philippines to speak with students about my career as a UX researcher in industry. We were not able to get through all the questions that were posed through that Start the STEM Start in You event. So I'm going to be using the next 10 minutes or so to wrap up those questions that we didn't get asked. And I'm limiting myself to 10 minutes because I don't want to ramble on any longer than that. So in this extended Q&A, I've lumped and collected, thankfully, received the questions from the organizers and have clustered those questions into different types of categories. And the first category that I've seen happen or occur thematically in the questions collected were questions that were focused on my career. So one of the students asked, why did you choose the career that you currently have? For me, I look at research as one of the most interesting ways where I can satiate my curiosity by using the skills that I've learned both in the classroom and in the real world to answer really interesting and thorny problems. Why did you choose the career path you're on now? So right now, in my point in my career, having done over 20 years of education, I really wanted to use my learnings to make real world changes that would really have huge impact. So in my role as a technologist, I get to work on product facing applications and websites that improve the quality of life for thousands, if not millions of users. And I think that's something that's intrinsically rewarding. Among all the jobs that you've landed, what was the most difficult one and why? One of the opportunities I was most proud of ascertaining earlier on in my career was being able to intern at Airbnb as a researcher. I know that that was a really coveted and competitive position, but having been able to network with different folks in grad school, I've been able to set myself up for several rounds of interviews. And through careful preparation, I have been able to make it through the gauntlet and really use that opportunity as a springboard for my UX research career. Did you ever have any doubts at your chosen profession? For me, I don't like to wallow or waste time doubting myself for any shortcomings that I might have. I am continuously looking to improve, and I don't want to waste any energy changing circumstances that I cannot control. Can you tell me about your work and challenges as a professional in your chosen career field? One of the biggest challenges that I'm facing at the moment is really really improving the ways in which I can automate my workflow so that I can really focus on tasks that allow me to have deeper focus in my work. And because I work in tech and I have to field so much different correspondence to and from peers and coworkers through emails and Slack messages, sometimes it's really hard to just have the time to analyze what I need to work on. So one of the biggest challenges that I'm facing right now and I'm actively working toward is carving out time to do deep work. The next set of questions wanted to understand more about my educational background. How did you achieve those things and what made your dreams possible? So I have a pretty interesting CV. And for me, I think that I was able to really prioritize what was most important in my life. And based on those priorities, ruthlessly cut out anything that was not part of my values or not part of what I wanted to do as a person who only has one life. What studying techniques can you recommend to us that can be applied to our online class situation? I would recommend focusing much more on learning how to learn so that you are ready to understand and apply your ways of working to any field or subset. What do you think is a skill or ability that you have that made you successful as a senior user experience researcher? I'm tenacious. I will do whatever it takes to get the job done. And I think that willpower and that can-do attitude has gotten me to where I am today. What factors influence your decision to pursue the position you currently hold? Again, I look at technology as a lever and a vehicle for change, and that's what naturally attracts me to pursue the opportunities I pursue. The next set of questions focused on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. One of the questions was, what do you think are the most common mistakes people, especially students, make when making their research papers? And what tips can you share for us to avoid them? I know in my days as a student, I often dreaded having to cite all these different sources and having to really pay attention to the punctuation and the formatting of these citations. So I'd recommend using a citation manager. I ended up learning how to not only use that, but use software like LaTeX, which allows me to really focus on the content at hand and not have to worry too much about the formatting. Is there any advice you can share with all STEM students that are struggling with their academics? I would recommend finding and forming a really strong, close network of peers. You don't have to be in the same major field of study, but I've always found that having a close circle of peers to keep you accountable will make sure that you feel supported on your academic journey. Do you have any advice you can give to upcoming and current STEM students? Again, make sure that you find your network, find your tribe, love them hard. How can global marketplaces and online communities been affected by the aftermaths of this pandemic? So we're still in the pandemic and global markets have shifted. We know that, given the current state of elections and given where the current markets are, it's very volatile and it's really hard to predict what even the next 5 to 10 years will look like. So we're still living with the lasting effects of this pandemic today. There were also a good set of questions that focused on research. What are the tips to have good research or worthy research? Relatedly, can you give us some tips to ace our research? And what are the tips that you can give us in order to conduct good research? I think what really great research comes down to is understanding how to form a research question and finding a strategy or an approach or a method to answer that question to your fullest extent or to your best ability. What do you think is your biggest breakthrough / greatest milestone in the research industry? I think one of my proudest moments so far as a researcher, at least within an academic lens, was winning a best paper award from the ACM. It's the Association of Computing Machinery. And this was a paper that I presented at the Computer Supported Cooperative Work and Social Media Conference. And it was one of my chapters of my dissertation when I was completing my PhD. And in order to have the paper even get submitted to this conference, it had to go through peer review, and it was a pretty selective process. And on top of getting accepted past peer review, it to win the best paper award is all you have to be the top 1% of all of the submissions. And to have my paper really win that distinction and not just an honorable mention really showed me that my community cared about aspects of decolonization and moderation in online communities. All right, and the last set of questions are future focused. So what are the people's reaction to newer technology being released and introduced to us today, like virtual reality, for example? One of the biggest factors that we as technologists need to do a better job at is educating from the earliest parts of our computing programs what it means to be an ethical builder, an ethical maker. We really need to integrate ethics at the earliest parts of any STEM program so that we don't run into issues that we're running in today with regards to the techlash and breaches of privacy. I think that's really important. And I know that we as a profession need to continue to find ways to improve how we educate the next generation on this concern. There's a question about news on Earth lasting. There's news about Earth lasting up to 35 years. I am very dubious about that. I'm sure Earth will last longer than 3 to 5 years. One of the biggest things I wish students would do a better job at, and I wish our educators would also do a better job at, as well as teaching information literacy. Don't believe everything that you see on social media or on the news. Learn how to be critical of the information that you're digesting. And lastly, is there any advice that you can give to students who are studying right now, but are also currently wanting to try looking for a job in the STEM field? If we think we're qualified to apply as a UX researcher, do you think we can apply for that job or similar job that's open to us? Or would it not be recommendable since it would not interfere with our school life? Since it wouldn't interfere with their school life? I'd say you should apply to as many opportunities that you have the bandwidth that fit what you feel would be great for your skill set. There is no harm in applying for opportunities now. The worst that can happen is a rejection, but you should always look at rejection as a redirection, and it can still be an opportunity for you to pursue in the future. We're still in the pandemic, so I would always advocate for prioritizing your mental health and physical well-being. But there is nothing that is preventing you from pursuing a full-time UX research role and continuing your education. All right, thank you so much for those 20 questions. I hope that you all find value in this extended Q&A. Please feel free to connect with me on social media, on Twitter or LinkedIn, if you have any other questions that you'd like to ask. Again, I really appreciate the opportunity to interact with you all. Maraming salamat po.